If that door opens before sunrise, don't expect to find her alive. The warning rolled through the stone courtyard, followed by uneasy laughter, but Emily Carter kept her eyes on the iron gate ahead. Beyond it waited Nyx, the royal wolf everyone in Blackwood Pack called the king's worst beast. Emily had heard the stories since childhood. Nyx trusted no handler, tolerated no stranger, and had sent every trainer assigned to her running from the enclosure in terror. Now Emily was expected to spend the entire night inside with her. 30 feet behind her, beneath the silver banners of the royal house, Alpha King Ethan Blackwood watched without expression. "Last chance," one of the councilmen murmured. "Admit you lied about your gift." Emily swallowed. Her hands were cold despite the warm September night. "I didn't lie." More laughter. Of course they laughed. Emily was 23, wolfless, unmated, and an omega in a kingdom where strength was measured by how loudly a wolf could make others bow. Her gift was quieter. She could sense fear in frightened animals, sometimes even pain, but no one considered gentleness a form of power. Least of all Ethan Blackwood. The Alpha King descended the 3 stone steps toward her, his dark coat moving softly in the wind. At 6'4", he seemed to block the torchlight simply by standing there. His pale gray eyes settled on Emily. "You claimed you could calm any suffering creature. I said I could understand them." "Then understand, Nyx." He nodded toward the gate. Emily's heartbeat stumbled. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken." Now back to Emily. The gate opened with a low metallic groan. She stepped through. It closed behind her. The courtyard vanished beneath sudden silence. Emily stood inside a moonlit enclosure nearly half an acre wide, surrounded by 12-foot stone walls. An old shelter waited at the far end. Something moved inside it. 2 silver eyes appeared in the darkness. Emily stopped breathing. Nyx emerged slowly. She was enormous. Her black coat almost blew beneath the moonlight, but something was wrong. The wolf wasn't charging. She was trembling. Emily noticed the strained breathing next, then the restless pacing, then a faint trail of blood beneath her belly. Every frightened thought inside Emily disappeared beneath one startling realization. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. Nyx froze. Emily lowered herself carefully to her knees, making herself smaller rather than challenging the animal. "You're not angry." Nyx gave a low, exhausted whine. Emily's eyes widened as the truth became unmistakable. She turned toward the locked gate, but the guards were already walking away. "Wait." No answer came. Emily looked back at the supposedly savage beast and felt her own fear transform into something stronger. Compassion. Nyx wasn't preparing to attack her. She was about to give birth, and something was terribly wrong. Emily stayed perfectly still as Nyx lowered herself onto the cool earth, her breathing shallow and uneven. The great wolf watched her with silver eyes that no longer looked fierce. They looked frightened. Emily knew that look. She had seen it in abandoned horses during thunderstorms, in injured birds trapped beneath porch steps, and sometimes in her own reflection after another pack member reminded her that she would never shift. "I know you do not trust me," Emily whispered. "You do not have to. Just let me stay." Nyx answered with a soft whine and turned toward the shelter. Emily followed slowly, keeping several feet between them until she saw the nest hidden behind a fallen cedar beam. Dry grass had been gathered into a circle, but much of it was scattered from Nyx's restless pacing. Emily removed her light jacket and laid it across the cold ground. Nyx watched every movement. "You made this place for them, did you not?" Emily murmured. The wolf lowered her head. Another wave of discomfort passed through her, and Emily felt an echo of it inside her own chest. Not sharp, but heavy enough to steal her breath. That strange sensitivity had followed Emily since childhood. People called it imagination. Her mother had once called it a gift, but only when no one else could hear. Emily moved closer. Nyx tensed. Emily stopped immediately. "Your choice," she said softly. "I will not touch you unless you let me." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Nyx stretched one enormous paw forward until it rested inches from Emily's hand. Permission. Emily released a breath she had not realized she was holding. She placed her palm gently against the wolf's foreleg, and warmth rushed through her fingers. Beneath it came something else. Fear, exhaustion, and 3 tiny flickers of life. Emily's eyes widened. 3, she whispered. Nyx looked directly at her. You have 3 babies. Outside the enclosure, the last torchlight disappeared as the guards returned toward the castle, leaving only moonlight across the high stone walls. Emily glanced toward the locked gate. No healer was coming. No handler even knew what was happening. The pack believed Nyx was simply dangerous, but Emily understood now why the wolf had become restless whenever anyone approached her enclosure. She had not been protecting herself. She had been protecting her unborn pups. Hours passed slowly. Emily gathered clean straw from the shelter, carried water from the stone basin, and spoke in a quiet voice whenever Nyx became anxious. She told her about ordinary things. Autumn mornings, apple pie cooling beside an open window, the creek behind the cottage where Emily had grown up. Somehow, the simple words helped. Near midnight, Nyx finally rested her massive head beside Emily's knee. Emily smiled faintly. There you are, she whispered. Then Nyx suddenly lifted her head. Her entire body became tense. Emily felt the change immediately. One tiny heartbeat inside the wolf had weakened. She placed both hands gently against Nyx's side and closed her eyes. 2 small lives felt bright and steady. The third was fading. Emily's pulse quickened. Stay with me, little one. A strange warmth awakened beneath her palms. She opened her eyes. A pale silver glow was spreading between her fingers. Emily stared at it, stunned. She had felt other creatures' pain before, but she had never done this. Nyx stared too. The light grew brighter. And somewhere beyond the enclosure wall, unseen by Emily, Alpha King Ethan Blackwood stopped walking as the royal mark on his hand began to glow. The silver light vanished almost as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Emily staring at her own hands in disbelief. Nyx remained still beside her, but the weakening presence Emily had sensed was stronger now, like a candle flame protected from the wind. I felt you, Emily whispered toward the unborn pup. You are still here. She had no idea what she had done, and there was no time to understand it. Nyx shifted restlessly, then looked toward the shelter as if asking Emily to follow. Emily gathered her jacket and moved beside her. The night had grown colder, dropping close to 45 degrees, and a thin mist drifted across the enclosure. Emily arranged fresh straw around the nest and folded her jacket beneath Nyx's head. They call you the worst beast in the kingdom, she murmured. I think they never bothered asking what you were afraid of. Nyx released a quiet breath. For the first time, Emily noticed something unusual beneath the wolf's thick fur near her shoulder. A faint marking shimmered there, almost hidden, shaped like a crescent moon surrounded by 3 tiny stars. Emily leaned closer without touching it. She had seen that symbol before. Not on an animal. On the royal banners hanging inside Blackwood Castle. A chill moved through her that had nothing to do with the weather. Why would you carry the royal crest? Nyx opened her silver eyes. Something inside them seemed almost painfully human. Before Emily could think further, footsteps sounded beyond the wall. Ethan Blackwood stood alone in the passage outside the enclosure, staring at the mark glowing faintly across his palm. He had not seen it shine in 12 years. He closed his fist around it, but the warmth remained. Impossible, he whispered. An elderly royal physician approaching from the courtyard slowed when he saw the king. Your Majesty? Ethan immediately lowered his hand. What does it mean when the Blackwood mark awakens without a bond ceremony? The physician's expression changed. That depends on what awakened it. Answer me. The old man hesitated. Royal records say the mark responds to bloodline magic. Sometimes to an heir. Sometimes to a lost member of the royal family. Ethan looked toward Nyx's enclosure. For years, everyone had told him the creature inside had no connection to the sister he had lost. He had eventually forced himself to believe them. Now his hand was burning with the same warmth he remembered from childhood. Inside the enclosure, Emily knew none of this. Her entire world had narrowed to Nyx and the 3 fragile lives depending on her. Another hour passed, then another. Shortly before 3 in the morning, Nyx became restless again. Emily stayed close, speaking softly, allowing the wolf to decide how near she could come. At last, a tiny sound broke through the silence. Emily froze. A newborn pup nestled against Nyx, small, dark, and alive. Tears filled Emily's eyes. Hello, little miracle. Nyx gently nudged the pup toward her. Emily wrapped it carefully in the warmest part of her jacket. Minutes later, the second pup arrived, stronger than the first, its tiny voice filling the shelter. Emily laughed through exhausted tears, too. But Nyx did not relax. Her eyes found Emily's. Emily placed her palm against the wolf's side. The third presence was still there. Weak. Too weak. Emily's smile disappeared. She looked toward the eastern wall, where the black sky had begun turning faintly gray. Dawn was approaching. She had only hours left before the gate opened. But suddenly surviving the night no longer mattered. Emily pressed her hands together, remembering the silver warmth. "You gave me permission to stay," she whispered to Nyx. "Now trust me one more time." Her palms began to glow. The glow strengthened until Emily could see the fine lines of her palms shining silver against Nyx's dark coat. She expected fear. Instead, an extraordinary calm settled over her. The warmth seemed to move according to instinct, not thought, flowing through her hands toward the fragile life she could barely sense. "Come on, little one," Emily whispered. "Your family is waiting." Beside her, the first two pups rested against their mother, their tiny breaths soft but steady. Nyx watched Emily without moving. The trust in those silver eyes frightened Emily more than anger ever could. It meant the wolf believed she could help. Emily closed her eyes and concentrated on the faint third heartbeat. For one moment, she felt nothing. Then came a tiny pulse. Another followed. Emily released a shaky breath. There you are. Outside the enclosure, Ethan stood beneath the stone archway as the mark on his palm grew brighter. The royal physician stared at it with open disbelief. "Your Majesty, that is not simply responding to bloodline magic." Ethan turned sharply. "Then what is it?" "Recognition." The single word seemed to change the air between them. The physician stepped closer but did not touch the mark. The oldest Blackwood records describe this light appearing when royal blood encounters moon-gifted healing. That gift disappeared generations ago. Ethan looked toward the enclosure. There is only one Omega in there. Then perhaps everyone has been wrong about her. Ethan said nothing. He remembered Emily standing before the gate while the council laughed. He remembered how easily he had allowed their judgment to become his own. Wolfless, weak, useless. 3 words repeated so often that no one had bothered asking whether they were true. Inside, Emily's strength was beginning to fade. The silver light flickered. She pulled her hands away, afraid she might exhaust whatever fragile power had awakened. Nyx immediately touched her nose to Emily's wrist. "I am all right," Emily whispered, although her trembling fingers disagreed. Another wave of urgency passed through the wolf. Emily stayed beside her, speaking softly, guiding her through each difficult moment. The eastern sky slowly changed from charcoal to deep blue. Birds began calling beyond the walls. Then everything became still. Emily held her breath. A tiny sound reached her, so quiet she almost imagined it. She looked down. The third pup had arrived. Smaller than the others, it lay motionless for one terrifying second. Emily gathered it gently into the fold of her jacket and rubbed its tiny back with 2 fingers. "You fought too hard to stop now." "Nothing." Emily swallowed against the fear rising in her throat. She placed one fingertip against the pup's chest. A spark of silver appeared. The pup twitched. Then came a tiny breath. Emily laughed softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "That is it. Breathe." The little creature made a faint squeaking sound. Nyx lifted her head and touched her nose to the pup. Emily placed it beside its siblings, and for the first time all night, the great wolf completely relaxed. 3 tiny bodies nestled safely against her. Emily leaned back against the cedar beam, exhausted beyond anything she had ever known. "You did it, Mama." Nyx looked at her, then carefully nudged all 3 pups toward Emily. "What are you doing?" The wolf nudged them again. Emily smiled and gathered the 3 warm bundles against her chest. Nyx settled beside her, placing her head across Emily's lap as though guarding them together. Beyond the wall, the first ray of sunrise touched Blackwood Castle. Ethan stared at the gate. His glowing mark had become almost white. "Open it," he ordered. The guard hesitated. "Your Majesty, sunrise is still several minutes away." Ethan's gaze never left the enclosure. "Open it now." The locks turned. The iron gate began to move. And Ethan Blackwood stepped forward expecting an answer, never imagining that what waited inside would overturn everything he believed about Nyx, Emily, and his own family. The gate had opened only a few feet when Ethan stopped so suddenly that the guard behind him nearly walked into his back. Morning light spilled across the enclosure, touching the shelter first, then Emily, then the 3 tiny pups sleeping against her chest. For several seconds, no one spoke. Emily looked exhausted, her hair loose around her shoulders, her jacket wrapped carefully around the newborns. Nyx lay beside her with her enormous head resting across Emily's lap. The creature who had refused every royal handler for years looked completely peaceful. Ethan's face lost its practiced stillness. 3. The physician breathed behind him. Emily lifted her eyes toward the gate. Please keep everyone back. The guard stared at her as though she had forgotten who stood before her. Ethan did not. Why, he asked. Nyx is exhausted, and strangers make her nervous. Ethan almost corrected her. Nyx did not become nervous. Nyx became uncontrollable. At least, that was what every report had claimed. Yet Emily spoke about her as if she were simply a frightened mother who needed quiet. Ethan stepped forward. Nyx immediately raised her head. A warning sound rumbled softly in her throat. Ethan froze. Something passed across his expression that Emily could not understand. Hurt, not fear. Hurt. Nyx, he said quietly. The wolf stared at him. Emily felt her body tense beneath her hand. Do you know him? She whispered. Nyx's ears shifted toward Ethan's voice, but she did not move away from Emily. Ethan took one more careful step. Sunlight reached the crescent-shaped mark beneath Nyx's fur. The royal physician gasped. Your Majesty. Ethan had already seen it. His complexion went pale. That mark was not there before. It was, Emily said. I noticed it during the night. Ethan looked at her sharply. Show me. Emily hesitated, then gently moved Nyx's fur aside. The crescent and 3 stars shimmered in the dawn. Ethan stared at the symbol as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. His glowing palm slowly opened. The mark on his hand matched it exactly. Emily's breath caught. What does that mean? Ethan did not answer. He knelt several feet away, making himself smaller before the wolf. The Alpha King, a man entire packs feared, lowered himself onto one knee in the dirt. If you are who I think you are, he said softly, give me something only she would know. Nyx watched him for a long moment. Then she lifted one paw and touched 3 times against the earth. Ethan closed his eyes. Once, twice, 3 times. When he opened them again, the cold King Emily had met the night before seemed gone. Claire used to do that when we were children, he whispered. 3 taps meant I am still here. Emily looked from Ethan to Nyx. Claire. The physician answered because Ethan seemed unable to. Princess Claire Blackwood, the king's younger sister. Emily stared at the wolf beside her. But Princess Claire disappeared 12 years ago. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on Nyx. Yes. Nyx leaned toward him, but stopped halfway, as if something invisible prevented her from crossing the distance. Emily suddenly felt it. Beneath the relief surrounding the wolf was another presence, cold and unnatural, wrapped tightly around something human. A barrier. A prison. Emily's silver light returned faintly across her fingertips. Nyx turned toward her immediately. Ethan saw it. So did the physician. Moon-gifted healing, the old man whispered. Emily shook her head. I do not know what that means. Neither did the people who spent years telling you that you had no gift, Ethan said. His voice was quiet now, almost ashamed. One of the pups stirred in Emily's arms, revealing a tiny silver crescent beneath its dark fur. Then the second pup moved. The same mark. Emily looked at the third. Another crescent. 3 royal marks. Ethan stared at them, realization spreading slowly across his face. His lost sister had returned. And she had not returned alone. Ethan remained on one knee as the 3 newborn pups shifted softly in Emily's arms, each carrying the same silver crescent that had belonged to the Blackwood bloodline for generations. The physician stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. If those marks are genuine, they are royal heirs. Ethan looked at him. They are genuine. There was no hesitation now. Emily glanced down at the pups, suddenly aware that she was holding 3 lives the kingdom might someday bow before. Yet Nyx did not seem like a princess to her. She was simply an exhausted mother who had survived a terrible night. Emily gently returned the pups beside her. Whatever she was before, she needs rest now. Ethan's eyes moved to Emily. No one usually gave the Alpha King instructions. Somehow he obeyed. He stood and turned toward the gathering guards. Clear the courtyard. No council members. No handlers. No one enters without my permission. The guards immediately moved away. Emily noticed something strange in Ethan's voice. The authority remained, but the cruelty she had expected was absent. When he faced Nyx again, regret filled his expression. 12 years, he murmured. You were here, and I never knew. Nyx gave a quiet sound. Emily placed her hand against the wolf's shoulder, and the cold presence she had sensed before tightened around her awareness. She closed her eyes. Beneath Nyx's animal form was something else. A memory. A young woman running beneath moonlight. A silver necklace. A frightened voice speaking words Emily could not quite hear. Then darkness folded around everything. Emily pulled her hand away. This was done to her. Ethan went completely still. What did you see? I do not know. Images, maybe memories. Emily looked toward Nyx. She did not choose this form. Something is keeping her trapped inside it. The physician's expression darkened. Transformation curses are forbidden under royal law. Ethan's jaw tightened. Who had access to Claire before she disappeared? Before the physician could answer, footsteps approached outside the gate. Councilman Marcus Vale entered despite the guards trying to stop him. He was the same man who had laughed when Emily was sentenced to the enclosure. Now his confidence vanished when he saw the pups. Your Majesty, step away from that Omega. Ethan slowly turned. Why? Marcus pointed toward Emily's faintly glowing hands. Forbidden magic. She has manipulated the beast and created those marks to deceive you. Emily felt the old humiliation return, sharp and familiar. Yesterday, she might have lowered her head. Not now. Nyx had trusted her when no one else had. Emily rose carefully, though exhaustion made her unsteady. I did not create anything. Marcus ignored her. She should be removed immediately. Nyx stood. She did not growl. She simply moved between Marcus and Emily. The gesture was quiet, but everyone understood it. Marcus stopped. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Interesting. Your Majesty? You called Nyx a beast for years. Yet the moment Emily touched her, my royal mark awakened. My sister's childhood signal returned. 3 heirs were born carrying my family's crest. And your first concern is not Claire. Marcus's face lost color. I only meant to protect the throne. Then why are you afraid of what Emily might remember? Silence fell across the enclosure. Emily looked at Marcus, and suddenly the fragment inside Nyx's memory became clearer. A voice beneath the moonlight, a silver necklace catching the light, and one name spoken just before the darkness came. Emily's breath caught. She turned toward Ethan. I heard someone in her memory. Marcus took one step backward. Ethan noticed. Who? Emily looked directly at the councilman. She called him Marcus. Marcus stopped moving. For the first time since Emily had known him, the councilman seemed unable to find the right words. Ethan rose slowly, placing himself between Marcus and the shelter where Nyx rested beside her pups. Explain, Ethan said. Marcus forced a strained smile. Your Majesty, an exhausted Omega claims she heard a name inside an animal's memory, and suddenly I am treated as guilty? Emily almost flinched at the familiar contempt in his voice, but Nyx pressed gently against her leg. That simple touch steadied her. I did not accuse you, Emily said. I told Ethan what I heard. Marcus looked at her. You should remember your place. Ethan's expression changed. Her place is not yours to decide. Silence settled across the enclosure. The royal physician stepped toward Nyx and examined the crescent marking without touching her. There may be another way to confirm what happened. He looked at Emily. Moon-gifted healers were once able to uncover memories trapped beneath transformation magic, but only when the afflicted person willingly opened the connection. Emily glanced at Nyx. I do not know how. Neither did you know how to help that third pup, Ethan said quietly. Yet you did. Emily looked down at her hands. She had spent her entire life being told what she lacked. No wolf. No strength. No future worth mentioning. Now everyone was waiting for something only she might be able to do. She knelt beside Nyx. Only if you want this. Nyx immediately placed one paw over Emily's hand. Silver light appeared between them. Emily closed her eyes. The enclosure disappeared. Moonlight replaced dawn. She saw Claire as a young woman standing beside the castle garden 12 years earlier, wearing the same silver necklace from the first memory. Marcus stood several feet away, younger but unmistakable. He held an old parchment bearing a crescent seal. Emily could not hear every word, but one sentence came clearly. The throne cannot pass through your bloodline. Claire stepped backward. Then silver mist surrounded her, and the memory fractured. Emily opened her eyes with a gasp. Ethan caught her shoulder before she lost her balance. Emily, I am all right. She looked toward Marcus. There was a parchment, a crescent seal. You told Claire the throne could not pass through her bloodline. Marcus's composure finally broke. That proves nothing. The physician turned pale. The Crescent Covenant. Ethan looked at him. What is that? An abolished succession law. It would have allowed Princess Claire's future children to inherit if anything happened to you. Ethan's gaze moved toward the three pups. Understanding settled over his face. Marcus backed toward the gate. This is absurd. Then you will have no objection to an inquiry, Ethan said. You will remain under royal supervision until every record from that year is examined. Two guards stepped forward. No one touched Marcus. They simply waited. His shoulders sank. I protected the kingdom from uncertainty. Ethan's voice became colder. You stole 12 years from my sister. Marcus looked away, and that silence answered more than any confession could. The guards escorted him from the enclosure. Emily watched until the gate closed, but she felt no triumph. Only sadness for everything Nyx had lost. Then Nyx suddenly shuddered beneath her hand. The silver light surged brighter. Ethan turned. What is happening? Emily stared at the crescent mark as darkness seemed to retreat from its edges. The truth weakened the curse. Nyx lowered her head, trembling as silver light surrounded her without pain, soft as moonlight spreading across water. Emily kept her hand against her. You are safe, Claire. Ethan stepped closer, hope and fear crossing his face at once. The light became brilliant. For a heartbeat, the shape beside Emily was hidden completely. Then the glow faded, and Ethan whispered the name he had waited 12 years to say to his sister again. Claire. For one impossible second, no one moved. Where Nyx had been, a woman now rested against the cedar shelter, wrapped in the fading silver light. Her dark hair fell across her shoulders, and the crescent mark still shimmered faintly near her collarbone. Emily immediately pulled the spare blanket from the nest and placed it around her. Claire opened her eyes. They were the same silver eyes that had watched Emily through the longest night of her life. Ethan stared at his sister as though even breathing might make her disappear. Claire. Her lips trembled into the smallest smile. You got taller. Ethan gave a broken laugh, then dropped to his knees beside her. He stopped before touching her, waiting. Claire reached for him first. Their hands met, and 12 lost years seemed to collapse into that single quiet gesture. Emily looked away, giving them the privacy of a moment neither had believed would ever come. Then one of the pups made a tiny sound from the nest. Claire turned immediately. My babies. Her voice carried such tenderness that Emily felt tears rise again. She carefully lifted the nearest pup and placed it into Claire's arms. Ethan stared at the other two. 3 heirs, he murmured. Claire shook her head. 3 children. Let them be children first. Ethan looked at her, then nodded. Whatever you want. The royal physician examined Claire from several feet away before speaking. The curse appears broken, but you need rest. Claire's gaze moved to Emily. She broke it. Emily shook her head. You did. I only helped you find the way back. Claire smiled. You always spoke to me like I was still a person. Those words struck Emily harder than praise ever could. Behind them, the gate opened again. Several council members had gathered outside, drawn by news of Marcus's detention. Their whispers stopped when they saw Claire. One older councilwoman stared at Emily's glowing fingertips. Your Majesty, regardless of what happened here, the Omega used unregistered magic. Royal law requires an investigation. Emily felt the familiar weight return. Even after everything, someone had found another reason she did not belong. Ethan stood. There will be an investigation. The councilwoman relaxed too quickly. Then she should be confined until the council determines whether she is dangerous. No. Ethan's answer was calm. The investigation will determine why a moon-gifted healer lived among us for 23 years while everyone responsible for recognizing such gifts called her worthless. Silence followed. Emily looked at him. Ethan turned toward the gathered council. Last night, I allowed prejudice to become judgment. I placed Emily Carter in this enclosure because I believed strength had to look like dominance. His eyes moved briefly toward Claire and the pups. I was wrong. No Alpha King apologized publicly. Emily knew that from every history lesson she had ever heard. Yet Ethan faced his pack without hiding behind his crown. Emily protected my sister when none of us understood her. She saved 3 newborn lives. She uncovered a crime buried for 12 years. No one will punish her for possessing the gift that made those things possible. The councilwoman lowered her gaze. One by one, the others followed. Ethan then turned toward Emily. To her astonishment, he lowered himself onto one knee before her. "Emily Carter, I owe you more than an apology." She stared down at him. "Please stand." Something almost amused touched his expression. That sounded like an order. Maybe it was. For the first time, Ethan smiled. He rose and offered his hand, not as a king commanding an omega, but as a man asking permission. Emily hesitated before placing her hand in his. The instant their skin touched, silver light flashed between their palms. Every wolf in the courtyard went silent. Ethan's smile disappeared. His eyes widened. Somewhere deep within him, something ancient awakened and spoke one unmistakable word. "Maid." Emily felt the word before she understood it. It moved through the silence like a bell heard from somewhere far away, not spoken aloud, yet somehow unmistakable. Ethan released her hand at once, not because he rejected what had happened, but because he saw the uncertainty in her face. The silver light faded between them. Around the courtyard, no one dared speak. Emily looked at him. What was that? Ethan seemed to search for an answer that would not frighten her. "My wolf recognized you." Her heartbeat quickened. She had grown up hearing stories about maid bonds, about destiny choosing where rank and tradition could not. But those stories had always belonged to other people. People with wolves. People who mattered. "That cannot be right," she whispered. Ethan's expression softened. "Last night, I would have agreed with you." Emily almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Less than 12 hours earlier, he had locked her behind an iron gate because he doubted her gift. Now the oldest bond in their world had apparently chosen them. Claire watched from the shelter, one pup sleeping in her arms while the other 2 rested beside her. "Emily," she said gently, "destiny is not an order." Ethan looked at his sister, then back at Emily. "She is right." He stepped away, giving Emily space. "Whatever my wolf recognized does not give me ownership of your future." Emily had expected command. Instead, he offered choice. "And if I need time?" she asked. "Then you have time. If I decide I do not want this." Something painful crossed his face, but his answer came without hesitation. "Then I will respect that." Emily studied him. For the first time, she did not see the Alpha King from the stories. She saw a brother who had just recovered his sister, a ruler confronting his own mistake, and a man powerful enough to command thousands who had chosen not to command her. One of the pups suddenly squeaked. Emily turned, and Claire smiled. "I think someone wants his night nurse back." Emily crossed to the shelter and lifted the smallest pup. It immediately settled against her chest. Ethan watched, something warm replacing the astonishment in his eyes. Beyond the enclosure, morning sunlight spread across Blackwood Castle. The same council members who had once dismissed Emily now stood quietly as the royal physician approached her. "There is one more thing you should know," he said. "Moon-gifted healers were never wolfless." Emily frowned. "But I have never shifted." Because their wolves did not awaken through dominance. They awakened through purpose. Emily looked down at the pup in her arms. A familiar warmth stirred beneath her ribs. Not pain, not fear, something alive. A gentle presence she had mistaken for emptiness all her life. Her breath caught. Ethan felt it too. His eyes brightened, but he remained where he was, letting the moment belong to her. Emily closed her eyes. Inside the quiet place where she had always found only herself, another heartbeat seemed to answer. Soft, patient, waiting. Tears gathered in her eyes. "She was there," Emily whispered. "All this time." Claire smiled. "Maybe she was waiting for you to believe strength could be gentle." Emily opened her eyes as the 3 pups began making tiny sounds together. Then, from somewhere beyond the castle walls, one wolf howled. Another answered. Soon the morning carried a chorus across the valley, not demanding submission, but welcoming something newly awakened. Ethan offered Emily his hand again. This time, he did not reach any closer. He simply waited. Emily looked at his hand, then at Claire, then at the 3 lives that had transformed one terrible night into the beginning of something none of them could have imagined. She placed her hand in his. Silver light returned, softer now, warm as sunrise. Emily smiled. "One day at a time." Ethan smiled back, one day at a time. And as the sun climbed over Blackwood Castle, the Omega everyone had called powerless walked through the open gate by the Alpha King's side, not behind him, while three tiny heirs slept safely in the arms of the family she had helped bring home.